A currently serving senior intelligence officer filed a report so disturbing the Pentagon sat on it for months. When it finally cleared for public release, one phrase stood out from everything else in the document. Quote, "We were virtually speechless after these observations." What exactly did they see? Hold that question, we're going to get there. But to understand why that phrase is so significant, you need a little context, because this isn't the first time highly credentialed, security-cleared professionals have been left without words. Let's go back, way back, 1949, Los Alamos, New Mexico, the most classified scientific facility in the United States. The people working there had literally built the atomic bomb. These weren't easily rattled individuals. And yet, in that year, a formal conference was convened, not about nuclear physics, not about weapons design, but about aerial phenomena, things seen in the skies around the facility that nobody could explain. That conference now has a paper trail. A declassified transcript from the 1949 Los Alamos Conference on Aerial Phenomena exists in the public record. It was released through the Department of Energy's UAP Declassification Archive, case DOE UAP D004, part of what's called the Pursue Archive, originally a Department of War file. Scientists, military personnel, and intelligence figures sitting in the same room at Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory trying to make sense of what they and others had observed overhead. The existence of that document alone tells you something important. The conversation about unidentified aerial phenomena at the highest levels of classified science didn't start recently. It's been ongoing for over 70 years. And in 1949, the people having it were the sharpest minds on the planet at the time. So when a senior intelligence officer in 2024 files a report saying his team was virtually speechless, that's not amateur hyperbole. That's a trained observer using restrained, formal language to describe something that broke through professional composure. Now, what did the recent Pentagon release actually contain? Here's where it gets layered. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence has been publishing annual UAP reports since 2021, but the most recent release cycle included something different: unclassified summaries of individual observation reports from credentialed witnesses. Not pilots this time, though pilot accounts exist in volume. This time, intelligence community personnel, people whose entire professional identity is built around accurate observation and skeptical analysis. The report in question, and pay close attention here because this is the detail that most coverage missed, didn't describe a distant light in the sky.
It described an object observed at close range, with multiple independent witnesses exhibiting what the document carefully called non-attributed flight characteristics. That's bureaucratic language for, we have no technology that does what this thing did. Specific characteristics listed in summary form included acceleration profiles inconsistent with any known propulsion system, apparent stability in atmospheric conditions that should have made stable flight impossible, and this is the part that reportedly caused the speechless reaction, a transition. The object didn't fly away. It didn't land. Witnesses described it as appearing to simply cease being present in the observable environment. Not fast departure, cessation of presence. Think about what that means for a moment. These are people trained to track, assess, and categorize threats. They have frameworks for fast. They have frameworks for stealthy. They do not have a framework for no longer there. Now, here's the twist layer, and this is where it connects back to Los Alamos in a way that I find genuinely unsettling. In that 1949 conference transcript, buried in the formal scientific language of the era, participants noted a recurring observation pattern from multiple witnesses near the facility, objects that appeared to interact with or respond to the presence of observers, not in a dramatic way, subtle, a change in behavior that coincided with being watched. The scientists at the conference were careful not to draw conclusions, but they noted it, and they debated whether the observation itself was influencing what was being observed, a kind of quantum-adjacent problem applied to macroscopic aerial objects, decades before that framing would have been culturally available to them. The recent intelligence report, in the summary language, again carefully worded, there is a reference to apparent behavioral response to surveillance activity. The object or objects seem to register being tracked. Same observation, 75 years apart, different witnesses, different technology, same note in the file. That continuity is either the most significant pattern in the history of this subject or the most persistent shared cognitive bias among highly trained observers, and I genuinely don't know which one should unsettle you more. What the Pentagon's release does not do, and this is important to say clearly, is provide an explanation. The ODNI reports are explicit that the majority of UAP cases remain unresolved, and that the resolution isn't simply a matter of more data. Some of these observations were captured on multiple sensor systems simultaneously: radar, infrared, optical, They're not artifacts. They're not weather. They are, in the language of the documents, uncharacterized and unattributed. There are three competing serious interpretations right now among people who study this non-casually.
1. These are adversarial technologies, Chinese or Russian, that have achieved capabilities we haven't, and the speechless reaction is classified embarrassment. 2. These are genuinely novel phenomena, possibly atmospheric or astrophysical, that we don't yet have scientific models for. 3, and the one that nobody in official channels will say out loud, but that the data keeps nudging toward, is that whatever this is has been here longer than we have. It's been observed consistently since at least 1949 by the most qualified witnesses we have, and we are no closer to understanding it than those scientists at Los Alamos 75 years ago. The 1949 conference ended without consensus. The participants returned to their nuclear research. The aerial phenomena continued. The Pentagon released its files. The intelligence officer's account is now public. And the phrase that passed classification review, that made it through the redaction process, that somebody decided the public was allowed to read, is still sitting there. We were virtually speechless after these observations. Not we were confused, not we could not immediately identify. Speechless, from people who talk about threats for a living. If you've seen something you can't explain, or if you've come across documentation that connects to any of this, drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe if you want to keep going down this road together, because we are just getting started.